Welcome to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
Welcome to episode 29 of Destination Linux. I'm Rocco, and with me today is Ryan, also known as Das Geek.
It's good to be here.
What's going on, man?
Oh, we're having a blast. I'm so excited to finally be on this podcast again. I can't believe you invited me back. Something's wrong.
We invited you back, even after having you the first time.
This is the first time I've ever been invited back to something. Thank you for that.
All right, so for the people that don't know, well, most of you know that Rob is taking a hiatus from Destination Linux, and we need to have another host here because you don't want to listen to me just talk. So we asked Ryan to guest host this week, and who knows what'll happen for the following weeks. Maybe you will stay. Maybe we'll ask you back a third time.
Just wait till you see the community comments before you make that decision.
Right. So who are you, Ryan? Who are you? You have a YouTube channel. What's going on?
So yeah, I've got a YouTube channel out there that I do a lot of technology related, anything geek related, really content out there. And that has spawned in its early stages into a lot of Linux based geek material in there, thanks to the Linux community. I'd say a lot of folks from Linux knew me from the 30 Days of Linux challenge. It was just something that I randomly decided to do on my channel, was try Linux for 30 days on one of the most powerful PCs I could afford and see if I could do everything that I was doing in Windows, from game development, web design, whatever it was, in Linux world. And of course, most of you who use Linux know the answer. Of course I could, but I also fell in love and never went back to Windows. So that's kind of what stuck. So a lot of my channel is, you can get tech reviews, different technology out there that you can see, but also do some operating system and reviews on different Linux distributions and things that I'm doing within Linux as well. So it's a lot of fun.
I watched a video of yours the other day, and you were listening to Justin Bieber at the time or something like that.
That was a virus. That was absolutely a virus. Rocco's talking about a Bluetooth headphone review that I did, and there was a little joke in there where I was trying to listen to Destination Linux podcast, but Justin Bieber popped up. So
for some reason.
I don't know how that
unknown reason. I don't know why that happened, but
must have been my kids, the 2-year-old.
Blame it on the kids when in doubt.
Exactly.
Okay, so out of the way of that, we have some news, dude. And before we start the news, I do have to make one amendment from last week. Me and Rob talked about the Budgie menu and, the Budgie desktop in general, and how the Budgie menu sorted items and whatnot, and how we talked about how it wasn't for me and we didn't really care for it. But since that time, or maybe it was even done before this, but and I didn't know it, but there have been updates to Budgie, including on the menu, to make it more, shall we say, brisk-like. And it supposedly works way better than it did before. It doesn't sort the items like it did before, so that's a plus. And there's also been all kinds of updates to Budgie itself. 10.4 is out, so if you want to go check it out. But I just wanted to make an amendment to say that even though I was pretty hard on the Budgie menu last week, it has been upgraded, so there may be that may be in my future.
They were listening. Yeah.
Well,
I can tell you that it's interesting. Budgie, their at least YouTube channel has responded to several of my videos on Budgie. I'm a huge fan of it. I use it on a MacBook Pro, and I actually absolutely love it. But they're very engaged with the community, which I think is interesting. So maybe they put a fix in as soon as they listen to Destination Linux.
Well, Budgie gets the remnants from, or not the remnants, but they get the effects from whenever Ike and Solus makes any updates. So Ike makes the updates in Budgie itself in Solus, and then it goes up to, and
Gotcha.
Budgie gets the effects of it. So I'm going to have to test it out. I have said before that Budgie is something that I would run as my daily driver if the menu was fixed. So maybe, who knows? Maybe the menu's fixed and maybe I'll run it.
Now the challenge is back in your corner.
That's right.
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, on the heels of that, there's another new release, and I was like super excited to see this. So our good friend Jody James, and hopefully he will make time to come on the show next week or in the following weeks to talk to us about it. But RevengeOS. So it was originally called OB Revenge, and you had OB Revenge, Mate Revenge, and K Revenge. And their desktop environments obviously were OpenBox, Mate, and KDE. But now they are all merged into one to make RevengeOS. So now you have not only a choice of installing OpenBox, Mate, or KDE, but you also have the ability to install Gnome, XFCE, and i3 Window Manager in the install process.
So have you played with this operating system at all?
I had installed it before, but I just installed it on a test drive the other day and took a look at it. I don't know why I installed the XFCE part of desktop environment.
I did the same thing. It just seemed the default.
I have no idea why I did that, but I did. I installed the XFCE part of it, and it was like running like a flash, man. Jody does such a great job with not only, the actual look of things, but he adds so many tools into it, so many helpful things that, man, for a newer person coming to Arch, that would be a distribution to try. So
absolutely. I felt it was absolutely gorgeous the second you log in. It almost has this gamer-like style to it, right? You've got these logos with the little target. Everything was really red. And it was very beautiful, let's say. But I installed the XFCE version as well. As extremely snappy. And, I felt right at home with it. Obviously, I'm a big Manjaro fan. So to me, when I went in there, I just... The winners use Manjaro.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
But I felt at home with it. I just thought everything was well laid out. It was very easy. Like you said, there were a lot of, they had like a PA Mac software installer, which was a little different GUI than what I see inside of Manjaro's standard software installer. I can't think of the name.
But I like PayMac better than, Manjaro uses Octopi. I don't know if that's how you say it, Octopi, but that's how I say it. But Manjaro uses Octopi, and I usually, if I'm going to run in Manjaro, I will uninstall that and install PayMac, because PayMac just seems to be easier to me. But that may be coming from running Intergos for so long. So,
yep, I noticed the Chromium default browser they had in there, and the RevengeOS control panel, which they had as well, and a Revenge installer for software in there for different programs. So I thought it was just brilliantly done. What a beautiful operating system.
Well, they have a new online installer called Nemesis, and that worked flawlessly. I was able to install it the first time without any issues whatsoever. Then you have the tools where you have like the welcome screen. You have an NVIDIA driver tool. You have a VirtualBox driver tool, a kernel tool, a grub configuration tool, all kinds of different things that he adds that just make it so much easier to do things that you would normally have to do in a manual way. You also have new artwork from my man Carl Schneider, one of the most talented guys in the Linux community, and a new custom logo that you were referring to with the crosshairs by Carl and Thomas Schneider. So a lot of good things coming from RevengeOS, and like I said, maybe Jody will come on and talk further about it, and we'll dive deeper into it. But if you want an Arch distribution, and you may not be as familiar with Arch, RevengeOS is definitely on top of the list to try.
Agree.
All right, so going along, we have Mageia 6. Have you ever tried Mageia 6 or Medea?
I just tried, but it didn't get too far. I tried to do a live USB, which generally, if I'm going to really dig into a Linux distribution, I don't do that. But for time's sake, this week I put it on a live USB and tried to run it there. It did not get very far at all. I got through, selecting your language and all of that, and then it just went to a black screen with a cursor blinking at the top. And I was reading through some of the forums, and it seems like there may be some issues or bugs that they're working out between 5 and 6. A lot of people having issues upgrading from 5 to 6, but also others experiencing install issues similar to what I had. So I'm sure they're on top of it and we'll get a fix in for it. But that kept me from being able to play with this one too much and get a feel for it.
Well, it is an RPM-based fork of Mandriva, which started back in 2010. And just as a side note, I was looking on their website, and there is no official pronunciation for Mageia. You can use whichever one you like, it says. So,
that's what I like. That actually works the best for people like me.
How awesome is that for something in the Linux community? Just pronounce it whatever way you want.
I mean, that's the funny thing is, like, they could name a distribution IT, and someone would be like, it's Ite.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, like, come on, how am I supposed to know that? So I'm glad they didn't use an official term, so we can call it whatever we want.
Well, the term Mageia is for a Greek word, and it means magic in English. So there you go. That's the backstory of Mageia. Now, I did try Mageia a while back, and it was one of those ones almost like Manjaro for me, where it had a lot of nice features to it, but there was always something that went wrong. So that's why I never stuck with it. But in the new release, they are putting in KDE Plasma 5 to replace KDE 4, which they were using as their default desktop environment. They have a new package manager. They have support for AppStream, so GNOME software and Plasma Discover. More tools. A Grub 2 is the default bootloader, so they've updated it. And you can use the Plasma 5, or you can do GNOME or XFCE. So it's your choice of which one you want to choose and try out. But anyway, there's the story on Mageia.
So we talked about a couple different distros. Let me ask you, what is something that makes you want to try a new distro not just try it, but use it as a daily driver? What are the things that you look for in a distribution when you're logging into it? Because it didn't sound like you've tried it before, but maybe didn't really fit your needs. What were some of those things that...
Well, I mean, I did try it before, and it was actually, like I said, it had some things about it that were nice, but there was always something that kept me from using it. So, but as far as what do I want to see in a distribution for me to try it, I want it to be... number one, I want it to be modern looking for me to try it. Yeah. Okay. And that's kind of why I shy away from the XFCE desktop. Yeah. Although you can make it a little bit better. On a whole, you're never going to make XFCE modern looking until you bring it up to speed in the back end of it. Right. But you definitely have to look for stability. I mean, it doesn't matter what it looks like. If it doesn't run right, it doesn't matter. So right. In trying all of these, you have to, number one, does it fit your taste? Can you make it fit your taste? 2, does it fit your specific needs of software and stability? Like, okay, for example, there was a time where Ubuntu Mate had some problems with Kdenlive. Mm-hmm. And as much as I loved Ubuntu Mate and as good as it was, if I couldn't run Kdenlive without it crashing, I couldn't run Ubuntu Mate.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
that's
that
very
testing,
similar to how I look at it. There are certain programs I'm completely dependent upon, and if the implementation of those programs isn't done well, I'm not going to spend a ton of time trying to fix it. I'm just going to go to a distro I know it works with perfectly out of the box. I know a lot of folks say, well, you can go in there and you could fix that, or you could do this, or you could download that. Sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes right. I just want to use my software and go. I don't want to troubleshoot at this moment. I need to make a video, or do something else. So that's an interesting point you make there. That's very similar to how I look at these distros out there. So what interests you from a brand new distro, though? If something comes out on the market, what are some of the words or things that you look for specifically that you go, okay, I've got to try this? Is it a certain desktop environment support or?
No, I don't think it's a certain desktop environment. It's more or less, what does it offer? So, for example, like with RevengeOS, it offers all these different tools that some other distributions don't even have. So that would make me want to try it. But as far as running it, it's, we'll go back to Ubuntu Budgie, where that was something that I installed just trying it because it was something new and different. Because you had the Raven side panel and you had all these different things about it. But once I installed it, everything was so, like, all the defaults were just exactly where I would want them. That's what would make me want to run that as a daily driver. Gotcha.
So I think that's interesting and kind of, syncs into one of the other stories we have on here for Pop! OS. And the reason why I think it sinks in there is I get a lot of times when I move to different distributions, people will comment, it doesn't work for me. And yet when I installed it on my hardware, it worked perfectly. The exact same thing could be said about, vice versa of that, where, individuals are using it and I can't get it to run, etc. So one of the things that I think is interesting about Pop! OS is now you have a hardware manufacturer, System 76, who's out there actually creating this operating system, this Linux distribution. So they know that everybody who has that piece of hardware is going to have the same experience that anyone else does. Now, of course, if you don't have that hardware, then you may not have that experience, but certainly you could go onto the specs of System 76 and see what they're running so that you could create something kind of similar. Very interesting because you're seeing a lot of folks like Microsoft start taking back control of, I know you're never supposed to use that word on
Microsoft. Did you say that?
Yeah. This should be like one of those things where buzzers go off and alarms.
Flashing lights.
But, they had to take back control of their hardware because so many people were just creating cheap hardware that it, really made them look bad. And so I think it's interesting that System 76 is out here and that they're actively updating Pop! OS. And I know you've done videos on that and played with it before, and it's definitely one that I want to get in there and play with too. And they've got some updates. They're constantly updating their software.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, but there's two different trains of thought there. They're not actually creating a distro. They're just putting a wallpaper respin out there, which I don't prescribe to. I think that what they're doing is a good thing. And they're doing something to brand their company and market their stuff. And that, to me, is a great thing. Whether you consider it a distro or not, that's up to you. But their updates do continue. So they are working on CalDAV and CardDAV to make sure that work continues to update it so that it works right. And they're also, so last week they put out under G+. They're considering writing a new installer for Gnome.
So this starts becoming a little more than a wallpaper, right?
It's a little bit more than a wallpaper, I think.
Yeah.
This week they came out on their G+ and said that they were working with the elementary team and talking about their goals and elementary's goals, and they feel that they align. So the people from elementary are going to head over to System 76 headquarters in the last week of August to work on a new and improved installer. So a little collaboration there.
I think that's a really interesting collaboration because when I think of beauty in a distribution, Elementary OS is definitely one of the top players out there, right? I mean, everything they design is absolutely stunningly gorgeous looking. It's very modern. It's very sleek. So I think that them partnering with Elementary OS could bring some very interesting things to Pop! OS. I'm excited about it.
Well, I'm wondering why they didn't partner with them earlier to just do the whole elementary thing on System 76. But I guess maybe they wanted to stick with, plain vanilla Ubuntu. So being more popular, I guess. But because elementary is not for everybody, although it is one of the most beautiful operating systems out there, it isn't for everybody because of how locked down it is. But
yeah, it's not something I use as a daily driver either, but you can't take away its beauty.
No, absolutely not. Yep. So they also have automated firmware updates coming to the laptops that they have, which is, something that is needed because you want to make sure that you are on the latest drivers or whatever it may be for your hardware. Otherwise, you end up running into problems.
Absolutely. Big issue when it comes to gaming or anything else. Have you ever had a System 76 laptop or played with one?
I have not had one. I know they're based in Colorado, but no, I've never actually ordered one. They're one of the few U.S. makers that put on in Linux.
So I got my hands on one, and I was very impressed with the build quality. I think they did a fantastic job on the whole implementation of the system from beginning to end. It really felt like you had a complete package device out there. Everything ran on it flawlessly, and it was very fast. It had the particular one I picked up on eBay. It had multiple hard drives in it instead of a CD-ROM, which is what I prefer, the extra weight being for the hard drive space. I just thought ultimately they did a fantastic job on their build. So I'm very excited to see where this one goes.
Well, if you want to contribute to Pop OS, and you're a coder and you want to help them out, we'll post a link in the show notes for the GitHub tracker. And they've also created some documentation to walk you through on how to contribute. So we'll post that there. You can check it out and maybe you can help them out.
There you go. Make it the OS you want.
That's right. All right, so we have another release. It's actually a point release, which is Deepin 15.4.1. So 15.4 launched 3 months ago, and this is the first release point to the stable version. And the features, they're not huge, but Deepin's already a decent operating system. Has some issues with translations and whatnot, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. But they have improved they have a mini mode for the launcher. They have optimizations to the 2D mode of the window manager, and they have a preview effect now at the bottom to show you the windows, kind of like where Gnome has a tweak, an extension to allow you to see the preview on your task manager. And other various updates, animation effects on the start menu and all that, applications and stuff like that. So it's definitely getting better and better, and it's those little changes here and there that constantly build and build and build to make it better. So that's
what I was going to say. Even though these seem small, they actually really could make this feel more of a complete package. Those things like Window Previewer, I use that all the time. I think that's just such a useful thing, especially when you have a bunch of things open, when you're doing video editing and that type of stuff. So I love little changes like that, and they can make all the difference in your workflow.
Well, it just adds polish too. If you want something that looks nice and runs well, you want to have these little things that people consider little, but like I said, Window Preview, it adds polish to it. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, we can't go a week without talking about KDE because they are updating on a massive scale, like they always do. This one here is not as big as every other update, but it's a 8-point release, so that it's up to 5.10.4. So it is the one before the last point release. So you're going to have better support for Mesa 17, and this, like I said, there's one more release schedule before August until it changes over to 5.11. So you're going to have 0.5 come out, and then it will switch over in August to 5.11. So
now, are you a fan of Plasma?
I am a big fan of Plasma, actually.
Good. All right. Plasma is absolutely beautiful. So I agree. I'm a huge fan of it as well. It's my daily driver. So I'm very excited to see the constant changes here and updates with Plasma. It's my favorite desktop environment by far.
Well, I've been running Gnome for the last month or two, but I started with KDE, and my heart will always be with KDE. And I think I have already said that when it hits 5.10.5 and that last release point comes out, because that's when it becomes like rock solid as far as being stable, I will end up probably putting it back on my machine. So,
and you'll get a bunch more work done.
I may get a bunch more work done. Look, I'm a big Plasma fan. The only problem I have with Plasma is, well, not the only problem. There's just little things I hate about KDE that drive me up a wall. And we've talked about them before, but just some of the things are like the GTK apps not looking right. You can pick a great, awesome theme for the Qt apps and the desktop itself, And then you go and you have, there's no way to find a good GTK app to match theme to match that. It just isn't. You'll spend a whole day trying to theme your desktop when you could have been working. So
I mean, I couldn't imagine your closet with something as little as colors and theme. Is every pants in your closet match another shirt? They got to be exactly coordinated.
Nothing to see here. Keep moving. Moving along here.
All of the suits are all black.
I like to be organized.
Yeah.
We'll say that. I like things to match.
You know, I've never even noticed, so now I'm going to have to go see if it's...
See, now it's going to be in the back of your mind. The next time you open something like Thunderbird and your theme doesn't exactly match your regular desktop theme, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Thanks a lot, man.
You can't unsee it now, dude. You can't unsee it.
That's hilarious.
All right, so we have a minor update with Gnome. They have, Gnome likes to rename their stuff. Not rename it in the coding area of it, but just rename the actual name of it. So, they did Gnome photos, and now it's just photos. Now it's just music. Okay, so they're taking the tweak tool, and it's just going to be simply known as Gnome tweaks or tweaks.
This doesn't seem like a big deal, but think about all the forums out there today and all the support people have given, like, go get Gnome tweaks, go get this. And think about a new user going in there searching for Gnome tweak, but the only thing they can find is tweaks. See, I'm thinking about people like me here. Like, there are so many times when I've gone into a forum and had that experience where I'm looking at it, because especially when I first started in Linux, and like, something like tweaks, of like, well, it says tweaks, but it don't say Gnome tweak, so right. I'm not going to install it. What's the purpose in really changing the name here? Are they like Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince, the tweak tool formerly known as Gnome tweak?
I don't think it gives a reason why they changed it, and I don't know if they even know why they changed it. They just want to be different, I guess. I don't know.
This is like corporate America, where they're like, oh, we need to show so we did something this month, and change the name of the organization. There we go. I'm not so excited about that change.
Oh, well, it's just a small change.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here. Don't worry about it.
To you, for us noobs, it destroys us.
Well, keeping with Gnome and Ubuntu, you have, before we go any further, you have a security update that came out in the past few days here. What is this? The 20th. So 2 days ago, because we're recording this on Saturday. And it fixes a few security vulnerabilities for the Ubuntu 14.04, 16.10, and 17.04 operating systems. So I'm not going to go into the details of each individual update because it's way technical over my head. Just know that you should keep your system updated, and there are updates for security vulnerabilities. So if you haven't updated, update now.
Some of these are a big deal. When I was looking through the list, you have denial of service attacks and things like that could completely take down a system. So it's definitely an important update, and it's good that they've gone in there and patched these, because these are not small vulnerabilities based on the list there.
Well, it's always good to have your system up to date. So don't ever be slack on that. You can be slack on, nodes.
Themes.
Themes.
Colors.
Things you got to pick up at the store. You can be slack at, but updating your computer, don't be slack at. Okay.
Yeah, just update it.
All right. So, do you even care about Ubuntu now? Because they put out a survey.
Oh, really?
Did you see it?
No, I haven't seen the survey itself.
Well, it's a survey to ask you, particularly you, or anybody else. Okay. It doesn't really matter. But they have a survey out for 1804 LTS, and they're asking what the default applications for the desktop should be in 1804. So they give you a part of a text where you can copy and paste, or you can go to the direct link and input your information, although I think that is a Google form, so some of you may not want to do that. But
Some
anyway,
of us Google haters.
yeah, some of us Google haters around here. But anyway, they want to know things like web browser, email client, Office suite, video player, music player. What do you prefer as the default? And they're not asking for just one. They're asking you to name them. And if you have multiple, you can put multiple choices there. Just put them in priority order. So if you want Chrome as the default, make Chrome your first choice, and then you can, use Firefox or Chromium or whatever you choose in those areas. So, all right, so let's go down the list, man.
Because you ended up pulling your users, right? Or your some folks on one of your live channels.
Well, on Friday Night Live last night, we talked to a couple of the guys that were on. There were 6 of us talking, and the chat itself. And we just went through the list of what we would choose for the defaults. So for web browser, you have 4 users wanted Chrome and 2 on Firefox.
See, this shocks me here on the Chrome. You move from Windows, right, and all of its metadata grabbing and all this stuff, to go to Chrome, where the entire business model is based on metadata grab. Why don't just boot into Windows at that point? I mean, what are you doing? What is this fascination?
Actually, I think there was one guy on Windows there last night, but
that's why Chrome was picked here, because nobody in their right mind would think that Chrome would be a great choice for Linux. I mean, it's everything opposite that a Linux user is trying to implement. Everything you do is tracked. Everything is scored for keywords to sell to you. To me, it's bizarro land to see Chrome as number 1 there. But I am excited on number 2, which was Firefox, right?
That would be your default.
Yeah, that's the default. Firefox or Vivaldi, something like that. But I think Firefox is definitely the one that most normal people.
Normal, he says. Well, I picked Chrome because that's what I use. Chrome. Oh my
gosh, Rocco, are you kidding me?
No, I did. I picked Chrome because look.
Did you pick Windows 10 too as your desktop?
No, I didn't actually. But I was a Firefox user before, but Firefox became so slow and so outdated and so not up to date with extensions. And then they have no idea who they want to be or where they want to go or what they want to do. Not because they don't have any idea, but they keep changing all of this stuff. They're going to, they used to have, they have the about config in Firefox where you can change all these user settings, and they're slowly but surely digging them out and taking all of these configuration settings out where they no longer work. They're going away from the legacy add-ons. They're going to the WebKit, and that's going to kill tons and tons of add-ons. And that's coming in, I forget, November, something like that, where it'll be Firefox 57. And it's just to the point now where Chrome is twice as fast as Firefox, going places and doing things.
So why not Chromium?
Well,
why not take the company out of it and use Chromium?
I did. I actually started on Chromium, and that's where I started with I went from Firefox. I'm like, I got to find something else. I went to Chromium, and there were just certain websites that wouldn't work properly with Chromium. It worked well with Chrome, and it even worked well with other things based off of Chromium, like say Opera. But for some reason, in my experience, Chromium had some issues with some of the sites that I went on that it just wouldn't display properly. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm already using Chromium. I'm just going to use Chrome. So, and that's what I did. But part of the draw to Chromium, and I don't really have a preference. Like if I was tomorrow had to use Chromium, I surely would.
Right.
But part of the draw is the sync option in Chromium where, you can sign into your account and everything comes back. Your bookmarks, your add-ons, your extensions, everything, your sign-ins, your passwords, everything. So,
right. I mean, Firefox has a lot of good, their sync works fantastically well. I've not had any issues with their sync. Now, I don't use any of their password stuff.
Right.
Because, I just don't.
Well, that's a little
that's very secure.
Yeah, that's a little overboard.
Browsers for that, but I've not had any issues using their sync options in there. So that's interesting, though. So Chrome for you, I would not have pegged you as a Chrome user. I now think a little less of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's an interesting choice. So email client was the next one, and you got Thunderbird as the choice there. I think that's a pretty good choice there, right?
Well, I mean, look, I use Thunderbird still. I was trying Evolution, and it was okay, but I ended up going back to Thunderbird, and it is the go-to email client. You just got to admit that right now there's just nothing that works as good and as flawless as Thunderbird. It doesn't look good to me. I think it looks like it's from, built with XFCE, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but it works well, and that's why I still use it.
Yeah, looks wise, you feel like there should be an AOL icon at the top, based on
pretty much. Yeah.
But it is the go-to. It is absolutely flawless as far as working.
Well, the other thing you got to look at here too is you can't just pick off-the-wall suggestions here either. You're not going to. Is it like we jumped down? Well, not jumping down, but we were talking about the file manager. To me, Dolphin is the best file manager on the planet.
Agreed.
But obviously, you're not going to install that on a GNOME system and make it default. So you got to kind of be subjective here and say, okay, or should I say realistic? I should say that you're not going to just get anything. You can't just put a mismatch of every type of program out there and expect them to do it. But well, they have other things that weren't quite as important to the people that I was talking to, like the terminal. One guy says, I said, which terminal would you prefer? And he says, the one I can type in. So, I mean, like, nobody really cared about the terminal. I prefer Tilix as my terminal. So that's what I use. But, some of the guys
you do just type in it at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, I just type in it. So
that's very true. I thought it was interesting, the screen recorder, because this is something me and you probably utilize a lot of. I know I do. I use OBS namely, although there are times when I've tried Simple Screen Recorder. Unfortunately, for some of my needs, especially recording gaming and things, it's not up to task with having webcams and everything up. At least I haven't been able to get it to function right. But I also have a love-hate relationship with OBS. It is a constant nemesis of mine. And in fact, just recently, I was doing the remastered version of a video that I did for Gaming on Linux. And OBS, I at least did 10 different takes just trying to get OBS to work correctly in Windows to show people Gaming on Linux and Windows is exactly the same.
Oh, so you were running Windows, were you?
I just booted into it.
And he's yelling at me for using Chrome.
Some of us like our privacy. Yeah, so it's OBS is, I understand why people put it there, and I think naturally this is one where I would say when you were talking about having two, why not just put them both in there? Because they're both have their purpose, and they're as good as you're going to get out there, I guess, at this moment.
Well, look, hands down, to me, OBS is the best screen recording program out there. The reason that I would say that you wouldn't put it in there is because there is a big learning curve with OBS. Like when you first open it up, it's like, wow, there's so many options, you don't even know what to do. It comes with a flat, basic generic startup page or startup area, and you have to add everything you want. And if you don't know what you're doing, you ain't working through it. Now, Simple Screen Recorder, it does have some settings, but it basically has the defaults already picked, and you can just hit next through it, and you can pretty much get to a point where you can record and not know a whole lot of technical knowledge about it. So that's why I would probably say Simple Screen Recorder should be the default over OBS, although I think OBS is way better.
Defaults really matter at the end of the day because all of this can be changed in any of the OSs that I've used. So I've never looked at these programs and like, oh, great, it comes with Firefox or Chromium or OBS, or it doesn't, because it's so easy to just go install it. So at the end of the day, does it really matter what they choose here, do you think?
I don't know. I think it does for the overall perception of how you look at it when you install it. And you have to realize you're not just going from you're talking everybody from new users to experienced users. So this is
their first impression.
Yes. Sane picks for the defaults are are a good startup. When you get that first impression and it's bad, you're probably going to go away from it. So I think it's important only in that aspect.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Video players. So what would be your default video player?
VLC. I just love VLC. I loved VLC even before I converted to Windows. It just works with everything. It's very cross-functional. In fact, you can even do screen recording and things in VLC. It's got tons of add-ons and capabilities. It's very powerful. It plays every type of file format. VLC is definitely one of my favorites.
Well, I would agree. I used VLC for the longest time, for years. Mm-hmm. I mean, because it was the go-to thing to use.
Yeah.
In the past year or two, I have noticed that there have been issues with it for me as far as just crashing or not working properly. Now, it doesn't happen to everybody, so it's kind of subjective to whoever's using it, but I have actually taken a liking to SM Player, and that is my go-to video player that I install for any operating system that I'm going.
Now, do you mess around with any file formats that aren't, kind of standard MP4 FLV files, or do you usually just stick with the standard?
I usually stick with the standard, but there are times where, you'll have an MKV file that you need to play or whatever. And so, I mean, VLC plays them. It's not that it doesn't play them. I was just experiencing issues that I had never experienced before with VLC. And that kind of made me want to find one that actually worked better. And there's a lot out there. MPV is pretty good. But SM Player is where I ended up landing. So
I'll have to check that one out. Very cool.
All right, music player. What do you think?
I have no preference here. I'm a title guy. I just go through the web browser. Don't laugh. Open Chrome because it only plays in Chrome.
The truth finally comes out.
But I use titles. So, I don't play with there were back in the day. I used to have thousands of CDs and all this stuff. Today, I don't have time for any of that organizing music files and setting up. I just literally go on Tidal or one of these paid for music services and search for what I want, play the song, and move on type of situation. So I really have no stake in this game at all. What about you?
Well, I don't use them as much as I used to because, as you said, I mean, everything, you pay for a cloud service and you don't have to worry about buying the latest album or having it on your system or taking up room. So if I'm using a desktop player, because I still have my music collection, my personal choice is, and I got made fun of last night for this on Friday Night Live, for G Music Browser, because it's one of the ones that could handle a large library. And it's so customizable that it's like the KDE of music players. You can make it look like anything you want. If you want it to look like Rhythmbox, you can make it look exactly like Rhythmbox. If you're used to iTunes, you can make it look like iTunes. And it has all kinds of different theming options and whatnot. So with the fact that it could handle the large library quickly and it was so customizable, G Music Browser is like my favorite, although it hasn't received an update since 2015, I think.
Oh gosh. No wonder.
But I don't, like I said, that's if I am using a desktop player, which I rarely do. And my music player of choice is Google.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait to read the comments on this episode.
I'll say. No, Google Music is what I use to listen to because it comes along with YouTube Red. So if you're paying for YouTube Red, you also get access to the music collection. So why?
And the good thing is with Google, since you're using it as your browser as well, they know everything about you and they can suggest perfect songs.
they suggest perfect songs for me. I don't know what the problem is. No, but I actually was on the hunt for a desktop player that would access Google Music, and it was there's not a lot of options out there, but I did find one, and it is an Electron app, but it is called a Google Music desktop player, and you basically run it, and it opens up in a window, and I mean you can do that with ICE if you want to. But this is native, and it has all kinds of options, including making a dark theme, blah, blah, blah. So it has all kinds of different settings to it to allow you to customize it. And it works great. So that's what I usually use as my player.
Yep. I think Clementine were some of the ones you got in your suggestion yesterday. Clementine's the one I see the most often recommended out there. It seems to be a very popular choice for it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that one.
Well, we will put a link in the show notes so you can actually go and check it out, take the survey if you want to, and give them your thoughts on what you would choose as the default. All right. So keeping with Canonical or Ubuntu, there is a fork of Unity 8 out there, and it's called Yunit. Y-U-N-I-T. Y Unit or Unit? I don't know.
They'll correct you in the comments. Don't worry.
Okay, so it is now available as an overlay repository for Ubuntu 16.04 LTS. So if you're interested if you were one of those people that liked Unity 8, I, for one...
There's like 2 of them, right?
Oh, man, here come the hate mail. I actually never got to try Unity 8 because even though this is a Unity install that I'm on, whenever I would log into the Unity 8 session, it would just go to a black screen or log back out immediately. So I've never got to try it. Have you ever tried it?
No, I have not.
Well, either way, if you were a fan of Unity 8, you can now install the fork of it so that you can continue running it, if that's what you want to do. But it is not possible to do that on Kubuntu, Ubuntu Mate, and 1 or 2 others because they run different libraries.
You have to really want it.
You have to really want it. And you have to be on the latest 5.9 Qt LTS for it to work. So it has to be, and like I said, Ubuntu Mate and Kubuntu, they run older versions of those libraries, so you can't install it on there.
Very interesting. Well, listen, I'm fascinated to know about this next section we're going to bring up here, your thoughts on RemixOS, the Android desktop OS being discontinued. So I think it's very interesting that this market is kind of blowing up. There are a lot of alternatives out there that have been mentioned. And when I first saw this, that RemixOS was going away or being discontinued, the first thing I did is start searching for what's out there to replace it. And of course, you've got Samsung DeX was one of the top ones that I saw as an option. But you have to have a Samsung device to use this. There's Chrome OS by Google.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
So if you have no interest in privacy, that would be a perfect option for you. They actually do have a Chromium OS version, though, which I thought was really interesting.
That would be a much better option.
Absolutely.
Much better.
And Phoenix OS and Cub Linux were just some of the options that I found out here. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this something you're interested in? RemixOS, I mean, did they kill it because of popularity issues? You know, Chrome OS obviously is super popular, right? It took off where nobody really thought it would, but I think a lot of that is the low-cost hardware.
Right.
And very simple, really virus-free style environment that you can set up because it's very locked down, but not something that's ever really made me interested in it at all. So,
well, it's always interesting to see something new come out. Okay, it gets your attention and say, "Oh, well, that's pretty cool," as a concept thought. But the question is, can they make it into something that is usable and something somebody would want to use? So, actually, Rob had a Remix Mini that he had used, and he would probably be the better guy to talk to because I've never actually used RemixOS or had any kind of Remix Mini or anything like that. So I don't know. And you mentioned Cub Linux, and I'm pretty sure Cub Linux stopped being developed. I think we covered that in
that one dead too. Oh no.
That one that died, I think, a few weeks back. That also. So, but it's not surprising to see this type of thing die because, like I said, it's for a niche audience. Like not
Right.
everybody's going to want to run Android on their desktop or something like that. So
Yeah.
it may work on your phone, it may work on your tablet, but do you really want to run it as your desktop? And
See, I see this more as a hardware manufacturing area for an OS to be jumped in, which is, it seems like with Samsung DeX, for instance, you got a Samsung device, you can run it on desktop.
right.
It kind of makes sense if, System 76 wanted to create a little netbook and be low powered, and they wanted to throw a little operating system on there like a Chromium OS. That's where it kind of makes sense for your entry level stuff. But for any power users or anything, it's just nothing that I've ever personally been that interested in. Now, I have used Chrome OS, I've had Chromebooks before, and I just find it so obscenely limiting in what you're able to do with it. But I do get that a lot of people are not like me, and all they're doing is web browsing and online content that they're absorbing. So it kind of makes sense, especially if you can get it for really cheap.
Well, the statement that they have put out says, over the past year, we received an increasing number of inquiries from enterprises in various industries and began helping them build great tools for their organizations by leveraging Jide's software and hardware. So we see huge potential in the role that Jide can play to revolutionize how these businesses operate. And given our existing resources, we decided to focus our company efforts solely on the enterprise. So is that code for that's where the money is?
You don't have to read too much into that to know what that means, right? Yeah. They weren't seeing a lot of takers, apparently. I'm not the only one.
Yeah, well, I'm not one myself, so. All right. Off to the next item here. What do we have? We have WeChat. Are you even interested in WeChat? Why are we even covering WeChat?
Because it was there in the news.
It's just a news item. Okay, so WeChat is now available as a snap for Ubuntu 16.04. So it's a free messaging service, and I don't think I've ever used it. So I guess the initial release was back in 2011, and they run on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Linux, but I have never used it, so I can't tell you how good it is or what it is or...
Well, when I saw this in the news, the first thing I was kind of looking up is, what are some of the advantages of snap packages? I've seen it lately, a lot of software distributions using it. Obviously, one of the advantages is it's very easy for individuals to install it because all of the dependencies are packaged within that application. But I started coming across really interesting articles talking about that creates a huge security gap. Because now when you go through, we were talking earlier about Ubuntu and needing to do some of those security patches. Some of those could be dependencies that your software, other programs are using, just as an example, they could be. And if you have a snap package, those dependencies are not going to get updated, right? Because they're housed within that snap package, as I understand.
Okay, so I'm not the best guy to talk to. We should probably have like Martin Wimpress or Alan Pope come on and talk about snap packages. But from what I understand, the advantages to snaps are that it gives the developer a way to get the latest releases that he puts out to everybody, no matter what distribution they're running, and not have to worry about support for each individual type of desktop environment. Mm-hmm. And I believe it does also update, or there is a way to update the snaps on your system.
Interesting.
The problem is with this article, and Matthew Garrett did a blog post on Snap and the way Canonical was putting out there that it brings it more secure. And in a sense, they are more secure. Snaps are the problem is not snaps. The problem is X11. So X has a way of dealing with certain things, and that can be exploited by pretty much any type of software, even deb files or snap packages, but it can easily be exploited by a snap file. So the problem is really not the snap. It's actually X that's insecure. So, but again, that goes back to any kind of software that you install on your system, whether it be a PPA or whether it be a deb file. And deb files can actually be worse than snaps in security. But either way, no matter what software you put on, Snap, Deb, or PPA, or even the Arch user repository, you have to be careful and know what you're putting on your system. You can't just nilly-willy put some software on your system without knowing what it is or what it does or who it's made by.
Yeah.
And you know, there are people that will not run any kind of outside PPAs just for that purpose. Like I put certain PPAs on my system, but I know that I only put on ones that have been trusted over the years for long periods of time. I'm not going to just go to a random website and say, "Oh, here's a cool PPA," and I'll put it on my system. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so you get to know which ones are the more trusted ones out there. And if they're, you know, if they do find something on them, you can always remove them. But regardless, you're going to have a security issue with any type of outside software you put on your computer. I just think Snaps it's a big hit. It's a big idea right now because that Snaps is a security issue because of what it's able to do.
Right.
But I think it's being taken wrong right now. So,
well, I think it's the right thing to do. I think these Snap packages and installers they're super simple. It would be great to see a lot of things go that way. At the same time, I'm very happy that people like Matt are out there challenging some of these things so that it could be looked into and see if there are indeed additional security holes or issues that they're not thinking about to get those updated. So, I mean, that's kind of what the Linux community always does. Somebody comes up with an idea and then a bunch of people come in and kind of help build it out. So I think it's good to challenge that security because what you don't want to do is you get more into this GUI interface and less of interacting with the terminal. The terminal requires you to know a lot more about how your system works as well as it can be faster. But if you start getting into this world where everything's just a GUI and clicking, then you start getting into that Windows world where people just get used to clicking everything they want, downloading viruses and blaming the operating system's junk because they got a virus. And so I think it's great that people are out there challenging it, looking into it. And I'm very excited about Snap packages and what they could bring for it, but also definitely want them to take the time to look into any potential issues with packages not being updated, especially in an open source world where that's a big part of it is software goes out there. We all download it. We love it. Somebody finds a big security patch, patches it. You don't want to have to run a separate updater for your Snap packages necessarily that you do for your main system. So, you know, there are a lot of things to consider there.
Yep. Well, he went on to say that Canonical asserts that it's secure. Okay, so if you're using Snap packages on Mir, then there's a genuine improvement in security, he said. But nobody's using Mir anymore. So, but if you're using X11, it's misleading. So any Snap package you install is completely capable of copying all your private data to wherever it wants to with very little difficulty. That's what he says. And
they should just call it Chrome.
The problem is the X11 windowing system. So, and the level of trust that it allows apps to have. So he made a little Snap package and he called it X Evil Teddy. And it basically was a keylogger and he was able to have it work perfectly through a Snap package. So, but like I said, the problem is not Snaps in general, it's the X problem. So
very interesting.
Hopefully there's improvements to it and ways to, you know, make it better, as they say.
So talking about bugs and potential security issues, let's get into gaming.
Okay, let's do it.
Because this week I've been playing with something. It's an MMORPG. They have a release on multiple platforms across the board. Albion Online. Have you seen anything about Albion Online or read any articles about it?
I actually haven't and don't know what Albion Online is because I'm not into MMORPGs. So, you know, go for it.
Well, listen, I started my PC gaming life on MMOs, so they're a big part of, you know, the gaming section that I just love. Ultima Online is one of the ones that kind of I draw a comparison to an Albion Online because it's that top-down, skill-based MMO, and I love the fact that they're releasing on multiple platforms and include Linux with that. So it's really one of the ones since I've gotten into Linux, one of the newer MMOs that have released on the Linux platform as well as the other platforms out there. So I was very excited to get in it, and I bought a Founders Pack. But installing it has become quite an issue. If you've seen any of the news about having issues at launch,
Now,
MMOs traditionally have a lot of issues at launch, but this one might be taking the cake here.
is this, are you having these issues on Linux install or Windows install?
Linux install.
Linux install.
Yep. Now, a lot of folks are having issues across the board, whether you're in Windows, Linux, or even in Android for that matter, are having issues getting the installer to work or update. And the amount of issues are kind of run the gamut. I can tell you that the first time I ever experienced a virus-like symptom in Linux was trying to install Albion Online. When I was messing with its files, it has some type of executable that literally will open thousands of file manager windows immediately.
Wow.
And it's done it multiple times. So if you do run across that specific issue, the only way to stop it is to switch to a different desktop, a different virtual desktop, and then it will stop loading them. Unfortunately, my PC is very powerful, so it can keep opening thousands and thousands and thousands of windows. And so I've had that issue. There's also some workarounds people have where you can go in and delete some files to get the launchers to work. I've had better luck in Ubuntu using Albion than I have in Manjaro. So Ubuntu, it seems to work much smoother, but they have some issues with the other distributions out there. So I will give it that. But if you are a big MMO person, this is a pretty cool MMORPG with lots of dungeon crawling. It's definitely community-based, where you get together with your friends and go fight some big monsters and enemies and level up your skills. You can make your characters really anything you want in this. You can even change it up midstream. Instead of being a sword fighter, you can become a magician or whatnot. So there's lots of great things out there that you can do with this game. It's about $29 to get your feet wet in it, and they have different packages, but $29 is your base package. But you may want to wait a couple weeks till things come out, because it just seems like it's full of issues. I'm looking at that $29 going, I hope that they get these issues fixed, because it's kind of hard to enjoy it.
Yeah, but I think that goes to a bigger problem where everybody's trying to come out with the newest and the latest game or the newest and the latest software, and they don't take the time to do proper testing. And there isn't a game out there that, okay, I won't say there's not a game out there, but most games out there, even up to launch and after launch, have issues and problems and bugs. And I mean, major issues sometimes. I mean, servers going down, network's not available. I mean, unable to play type issues that you would have thought that with the proper testing that they would have got this right. But I think it's more to do to the fact that they're just rushing these games out without proper testing.
Yeah, I love the idea that they came out and tried to have this multi-platform approach. It's very exciting, but you're right. If you don't do it right, then the excitement's dead, right?
It's not worth it.
So they've got some work to do. Hopefully they're able to get that fixed. MMOs traditionally have terrible launches. I mean, there's really not one I can name that launched well. So hopefully the key is if they get enough support, and based on some of the videos I've seen from folks like Hex out there, these communities are completely overwhelmed in game with players. So they certainly have a lot of people playing it. And as they get that support, hopefully they'll spend some money fixing it.
All right. So are you into RTSs?
Definitely. Now, I haven't played them in a while, but I'm a Command and Conquer guy. You remember that RTS? Yeah.
I do. All right. So Sudden Strike 4 is going to see Linux support at its launch, which is absolutely awesome. I mean, yeah, we just talked about not rushing games out, but if you can get it right, you know, it's awesome to see it at launch, because the last thing you want to do is be on Linux and say, well, I got to wait 3 or 4 weeks until I can actually get support for Linux rather than, you know, have a Windows version.
Absolutely.
So the publisher is Calypso Media, and Medea, I should say, and they have confirmed that Sudden Strike 4 is still on track for launch day for Linux support. And this is a World War II themed video game that's set for release on August 11th.
Oh, and it looked so cool. Did you watch the videos on this thing?
I didn't watch the videos, no.
Oh, it looked so awesome. Like it reminded me of that Command and Conquer feel. Obviously, you're directing your troops as you go into the battlefield, your top-down view. It looked very exciting and fun game, and it's definitely one that if they stick to their August 11th Linux support, I'll probably be picking up and doing a review on my channel because it looked very cool. The voiceovers and everything there made you feel like you're a commander over the army. I was like, oh,
Commander
yeah.
Das Geek.
Exactly.
All right, so the price is $49.99, but if you pre-order it before the release date, August 11th, they're giving you a little bit of a break. It'll be $42.49. So if you're into it, I would suggest buying it beforehand.
They didn't really stretch themselves on that break, though.
Yeah, well, that's a break. I mean, a couple dollars.
Here's $1. Thanks for
yes,
pre-order.
but in their defense, what game out there do you know that even gives you any break?
It's true.
Before the release date. So,
yeah,
I mean, usually they're
absolutely.
jacking the price up before the release date. So,
That's very true.
all right. So the requirements are a Radeon 7850 or a GTX 660, but they recommend a Radeon 470 or a GTX 1050 Ti. Now, I'm not exactly sure. You tell me. I have a GTX 960, and I don't think the GTX 1050 is much higher than that.
Yeah, you should be able to run it. No problem. Yeah. The obviously with the 1080, I don't think I'm going to have too many issues there running this game. And I like that they actually these requirements are not small requirement. If you look at the game, you can see it's pretty graphical.
Mhm.
So I mean, this is not some simple graphic game that they're releasing on multiple platforms. This is truly
This is not clocky.
Yeah, it's not clocky from last time. This is definitely a graphically intensive game. I mean, and they definitely have the specs listed here that you're going to have a gaming-like machine in order to run it, which is really cool. Starting to see kind of these more graphically intense AAA-like titles coming to Linux on launch day. This is what I've been predicting. That's going to start happening, and I think this may be one of the first signs of that. Seeing how well this launch goes, it'll be interesting to see how much the community, Linux community, supports this game out there, because that will definitely get other developers looking if they make tons of money off of these type of launches.
I've always said the more games that come, it'll be a snowball effect. The more games that come, the better the development will be, the more money they will make, the more the developers will see, hey, we can actually make money if we support a Linux version of this. So, because the idea is that Linux people will not pay for software. And that may have been true before, but I think that is not as prevalent as it used to be. And like for me, I will surely pay for a game to play on Linux. I mean, I would love to pay for a game to run on Linux rather than Windows.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No tucks, no bucks.
Right?
That's kind of what I've been going with. And honestly, I've been sticking with that as much of a gamer as I am. And I'm a heavy gamer, and I played many of my sessions solely on Windows before I switched to Linux. But I don't boot into Windows to game anymore. If they don't release it for Linux, I have nothing to do with it for the most part. Now, there may be some titles that I'm just going to have to break my back over and do it anyways. But for the most part, that's how I feel. They should provide Linux support, and hopefully with games companies do this, if the Linux community surrounds it, if it's something you're interested in, believe me, the developers will make it if the money starts pouring. So.
Yep.
Now you've got another game on here that just looks so cool, man. Abandoned Ship. I mean, we've got to play this together.
I'm telling you.
This game, we are going to have a blast.
Well,
So,
Abandoned Ship is something that I saw, and I'm like, wow, look at that. That is freaking awesome, man.
Yeah.
So what are they offering? What is Abandoned Ship, man?
Abandoned Ship is basically, there's a lot of games coming out like this, but it's that pirate themed ship game where you've got a big, what do they call them? Old school battleships? Is it like
I guess it's they name it as an Age of Sail ship. So it's like the old time ships.
Yeah. And basically you take command of the ship and crew. You're over there being like a Captain Jack Sparrow type, and you've got anchors hooking into other ships and ripping them towards you, and cannonballs exploding and people flying everywhere. I mean, this is excitement, right? I would love to see if you can have multiplayer support where somebody like Rocco could be the captain and I could be crewman, sweeping the floors,
Swabbing the deck.
Yeah, swapping the deck. But I saw so much potential when I was watching, and I was like, this is one of those games you could play with friends, and you'd be laughing so hard it would be hard to do anything else but laugh. Because, you know, if you start getting your friends caught, you got their ship plunging towards you, and you're exploding it, and they're leaking and screaming at you. This is good times here, man. This is good times. Okay.
Well, right now it's only a single player game, so we'll have to wait on the multiplayer part of it. But you basically take command of a ship and the crew, and you explore whatever worlds they have for you. You take on quests, you deal with random events like ships attacking you. There's going to be other ships out there that are going to start shooting their cannons at you, trying to blow you up. It just looks all around. It looks awesome.
Is that one of those ones you got to move in your chair when?
I have no idea, but it looks freaking awesome. And so it focuses on that type of era, and it basically has like a oil paintings type graphics to it.
The art was beautiful.
Yeah,
just looked gorgeous.
So there is no exact release date yet for this, but they assure everybody, the developers do, Fireblade Software, that they will be scheduling a Linux release for it. So,
well, Fireblades, if you're listening, add multiplayer just so I can take on Rocco.
There you go.
People would love that video. We'll even wear those old school captain hats and everything while we play. You know, we'll really get into it. All right. Well,
that brings us to the end of the news. So we have a little admin to get to that we don't normally, I don't always remember to do. So I'm sorry. I don't always remember to do it. But I do want to thank the Patreon supporters that have supported us. And I did want to announce that I am going to try to, that's the goal. The goal is to have the Patreon supporters get the podcast or vidcast one day sooner than the actual release of it. So it usually releases on Monday morning. Hopefully we can get the Patreon supporters, the vidcast portion of it, on Sunday morning. So if you're interested, you can find us, email us at comments@destinationlinux.org, or you can go to the website, destinationlinux.org, and get a hold of the RSS feed, the link for the Patreon, the Telegram group. We have a great bunch of guys and girls in the Telegram group that, there's all kinds of different conversations in that group, man, from everyday stuff to Linux. So it's like a whole gamut of conversation, and also the YouTube channel. So, and I did want to say that I appreciate some of the YouTube comments that were on last week's episode, wishing Rob well, because he will be missed. I had a great conversation with him, and hopefully he will join us again at some point someday. So all of that is appreciated. All right, so we have an email that I will apologize again for the long delay in getting to it. David, you know who you are, aka Rural Geek. Okay, so
I like him already.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I really like the way you had your guest host, both entertaining and informative. I really liked your interview with Martin Wimpress, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to... Okay, so he has an issue that he's asking for help with, and I personally don't use Clementine. So we're going to ask everybody to help David out. So has anyone else seen this? In Clementine, the Spotify plugin no longer works correctly. I used to be able to access saved music and playlists, but now I can't see my Spotify playlists. It will, however, play an old saved Clementine playlist from before things broke. So, well, first of all, David, we appreciate the email. We appreciate the comments. Anytime we get an email from somebody, it is read immediately. I may not respond to it immediately, but it is read immediately and is much appreciated. So what do you think? Do you have any problems with Clementine?
When I saw this in the notes, I went and downloaded Clementine, and then I installed the Spotify plugin, and then it said, hey, you need a premium account to do this. So I couldn't get very far in the troubleshooting to help David out here, but I did notice, on GitHub, they have an area where they have all the bugs listed for Clementine. And there's a lot of people, and I don't know if it's the exact issue, but talking about having playlist options out there. So, depending if the communities come across it and they have a fix for it, great. If not, I would definitely recommend jumping on there and putting a current comment that you're still experiencing that. Hopefully developers will be able to see it and address it if it's something that's having global impact to their software out there. Because Spotify is super popular. So I would imagine you're not the only one having that issue if it's a global problem.
Yeah, that is one of the go-to paid services for people to use music. I mean, I use Google, like I said, but Spotify is definitely one of the top ones. So somebody has to have run into this issue. So if you have, you can email us at comments@destinationlinux.org, and maybe we can help David out here. All right, Das. So we've come to the end of the show. So what are you working on, man?
I have an awesome video that I'm really excited to share. I did the remastered gaming version. That was a fun video this week, but I have a new video I'm working on with the Synology NAS. Have you ever messed with Synology?
No.
Network attached storage? Well, before everything I had was basically Windows based before I did the 30 Days of Linux challenge and switched everything to Linux. And one of those things was external network storage, which was Western Digital MyBook Live. And the problem is, of course, the Linux community has figured out ways to get all the software and Western Digital stuff to work. So that's wonderful. The Synology has native Linux support. So I wanted to get one of these. I wanted to play with it. And it's amazing. I am so excited about the thing. It is so much. You can do anything with this little box. And so
So tell me, what is NAS? What is it? What do you use it for?
Network attached storage. So this would be a typical NAS. What most people would use it for is setting up a RAID configuration. It's you basically connect it to your router. It runs off of your network. You can have files that you move to it, backups, all of that type of stuff. Essentially a network storage solution, right? So you can back up anything, all that. But this particular NAS allows you to do a lot more things with it. You can set up Plex servers, media servers, email servers, web servers, all with the click of a button, all with native software and Linux. This thing is awesome. So I can't wait to get that video out
So
there.
basically you attach it to your router, and then through your Linux system, desktop or whatever, there's software that you can install and then customize it, do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, and it's really idiot-proof software, which is great for people like
That's great for me, dude.
A lot of these things, a lot of different solutions, you can go in there and try to figure out the configuration, but you pretty much got to be a network admin to figure it out. This is GUIs, like click install, fill out what you want the email server to do, and click next and finish, and now you have an email server. Like, it's that simple and intuitive, and the software runs beautifully within Linux. You can schedule backups. You can set it up so that I have multiple computers in my home, that it's syncing up your software. My documents file on my main machine will be the exact clone of the documents file on my MacBook Pro running Ubuntu Budgie, for instance. So it'll automatically sync those so that if I use any computer, I see the same thing no matter where I go.
Wow.
There's all kinds of options you can do with it, but this thing is just so cool. And what's funny is it's one of those things that I ordered and I thought it'll be a good video. And then I started playing with it and I'm like, this thing's cool. I just can't wait to tell people about it. So I've been working on that video and getting that out. So that's the big one that I've got coming this week.
Well, that's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
That is absolutely. So what is the price tag on something like that?
Well, the device itself is $130, but you have to have hard drives to put into it. So depending if you have extra hard drives lying around, then, and how much storage you want, etc., will be dependent on how much extra on top of that. Now, I have their lower end version. They have ones that go all the way up to enterprise level. I'd love to get my hands on one of those, but
Right.
I've got one of the more personal ones. It's about $130.
Well, hey, if it's going to do something like that, it may be worth it, man.
I think so. Watch the video and let me know.
Yeah, I'll wait for the video.
Awesome.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you helping me out this week, and I love the conversation. It was awesome. So
Absolutely love it. Thank you for having me back.
All right, so this will be the end of this episode, and everybody have a great week. And remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Indeed.
See y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
Let me take a quick sound recording. Yeah, to make sure that you sound as loud as I do or I sound as loud as you do.
Okay.
So, say something, will you?
Why are we doing this? I don't know what I'm doing. It's seriously no.
You know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, you're right.